one of the fundamental reasons why I believe we must have restraint on the creation of credit. And that is, if you truly believe in freedom, if you truly believe in a free society, if you do, that means you believe that government should be limited to the protection of your liberty, not to the transfer of wealth. The paper money system is there to enhance those who believe in the transfer of wealth. You can transfer just so much wealth with taxation and the people rebel. The Fed accommodates the politician, and the politician gets reelected. So what does he do? Not only does he destroy the economy by manipulating the whole business cycle by the creation of new money, what he does is we lose twice, because he takes the money and he spends it on programs that don't work. Instead of doing the things they were supposed to do, the programs do exactly the opposite. You don't get more houses by the government building houses, you get less. And I also have come to the conclusion in the last few years that you don't even get more defense when you spend more money in the military budget. You get less defense for that. So I would say that so often when you can get the money so cheaply by just sending a little Federal Reserve or sending over a Treasury bill and get whatever you need, that I would say this enhances and it gives the ability of the politician and government to be all-powerful. And that, to me, is our great threat, because the programs are a threat to our freedom. The money, as it's being destroyed and as it's being inflated and causes the crises that we see around the world. And the best example, of course, is at our border in the South. Those crises threaten the political freedoms. I believe that if we could have a free society and sound money and gave up all our material assets, I believe that if we had our freedoms, we could survive without any difficulty whatsoever. But the problem today is what we're doing is we're destroying the money and at the same time destroying our freedoms. It was not by accident that the currency had to change over a period of time. The government size grew. So from 1913 to 1971, systematically they eroded and destroyed the commodity standard. As weak as it was, there was still some residual relationship of the paper to a gold standard up until 71, but since then there has been nothing. And it's for this reason you see the escalation of spending, government programs, and no restraint whatsoever.
Too often it is corporate interests who learn how to manipulate every contract, regulation, and tax policy. Likewise, promoters of the progressive agenda, always hostile to property rights, compete for government power through safety, health, and environmental initiatives. Both groups resort to using government power and abuse this power in an effort to serve their narrow interests.
Money of the United States are United States notes under Title 31, Section 5115. That is the money of the United States. Federal Reserve notes say on the top, Federal Reserve note, because they're a note of the Federal Reserve. If they weren't, then let's erase that and replace it with United States note, the way John Kennedy wanted to do, and then we would be on a sound money system. It would still be debt-based, but at least there would be no interest. Remember the words of Jefferson. What makes the bond good also makes the bill good. It's ludicrous to say you need a middleman in there to make sure everything's going all right.
And your point, Mr. Gause, is that the government, the U.S. government, issues this bond by which the Federal Reserve, rather, then authorizes the Federal Reserve notes, the money we carry.
That's right.
So if the credibility of the bond is what it's based on, why doesn't the government just print money on its own, as opposed to having this private banking organization doing the authorizing for it?
The best way to put it is, if you had a checkbook, which is what our Treasury is, it is a checkbook, and you had the power to write checks that no one would ever cash, which is what our money is because it has no backing in gold. So you're allowed to create checks that no one would ever cash. Would you write them yourself? Or would you give your checkbook to a friend, let him write the checks, and then borrow the checks back?
The economic impossibility of this system guarantees that the harder government tries to satisfy the unlimited demands, the worse the problems become. We won't be able to pay the bills forever, and eventually our ability to borrow and print new money must end. This dependency on government will guarantee anger when the money runs out. Today, we're still able to borrow and inflate, but budgets are getting tighter and people sense serious problems lurking in the future. This fear is legitimate. No easy solution to our fiscal problems is readily apparent, and this ignites anger and apprehension.
It is an instrument of debt.
It is absolutely an instrument of debt.
And when this bill is printed that we think is $1, it creates debt.
That's exactly right.
Now, this dollar that is no longer in circulation, that says it is a silver certificate,
correct,
when it is minted, when it is circulated or printed, it creates wealth.
That's right. It represents wealth that's already been created in the form of the silver dollar or a gold dollar in the case of a gold certificate.
All right. Now, I have one other note here, and this note says at the very top, this is a $5 bill, but at the top it says United States note.
That's right. Yeah, you've heard it said we owe the money to ourselves. Well, that is true. But the reality is that the only way that a regular dollar that we know as a dollar gets into circulation is when the Federal Reserve creates it and then loans it to someone.
This says, what note does this say now?
United States note. The critical difference here is
now
that...
this dollar says what kind of note? Federal
Reserve note. Now,
what's the difference in the dollar, the bill that's called a dollar that's circulated now that says Federal Reserve note,
right,
and the bill that used to be circulated saying United States note?
The United States note benefits no one except the people of the United States. The Federal Reserve note benefits the Federal Reserve.
Most soon come to realize the promise of guns and butter is an illusion. They come to understand that inflation, a weak economy, and a prolonged war without real success are the reality.
We start here with Congress, who overspends. Each year we spend more money on things like salaries to military personnel, Social Security payments, building federal highways, everything you can imagine. We overspend money, and Congress got to make it up somehow. So, as we move to slide 2, what they do is they authorize the Treasury Department to print IOUs. They say, you can do this, print so many. There's our arrow there, and they give that authorization, and they print the IOUs. Moving to slide 3, what happens is then the Treasury Department sends these IOUs to the Federal Reserve Banks. Now, they are private institutions, not government anymore. You see there, they're on the right. That's separating them from Congress and the Treasury Department, and those IOUs go to the Federal Reserve Banks. Then we go to slide number 4, and what happens is the Federal Reserve Banks then authorize the U.S. Mint to print what we hold in our wallets. Those are the Federal Reserve notes. Now, if you look at, stay on that slide for just a second. If you look at that, you can see the IOUs. These are Treasury bills, Treasury notes. There are various forms of IOU debt that have been given to the Federal Reserve Banks. They stay now on that right side. These Federal Reserve Banks now hold these notes and get interest on these notes when, in fact, they have provided nothing in the way of principal. They're just holding these notes, and now they, these private banks, have money that is yours and mine. Why don't you listen to this, too, because you're a skeptic in all this. It says, the Federal Reserve estimates there are $597 billion outstanding in Federal Reserve notes. If we replace these with United States notes at a cost of 3 cents each, the annual interest savings would exceed $45 billion. Mr. Gauze, what does that mean?
Well, simply put, these interest-bearing notes are representing the bonds. So if we replace Federal Reserve notes with United States notes, then we can use the Federal Reserve notes that we get in their stead and buy back $600 billion worth of bonds. The annual interest savings would be about $45 billion at current rates. Okay, the money is actually printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, which is under the Treasury Department. So technically, we still print the money, and I have no problem with that.
Right. But the private banks are authorizing the printing of this money.
That's right.
And they earn interest when the mint prints it.
Well, Thomas Jefferson put it best. He said, if a nation can issue a dollar bond, it can issue a dollar bill. The thing that makes the bond good also makes the bill good, except that the bond benefits only those who issue it, where the bill benefits those who are directly involved with the labor.
Okay, so to see if I understand what you're saying, whenever we have debt and the government prints more money, what's happened is these private banks have authorized this printing of money. They put their name on it, Federal Reserve Note, meaning private banks.
Correct.
And what happens is we as a people pay them interest on this money, which they haven't loaned us.
That's right. Yeah, the only way that money gets into circulation today is through the monetization of debt.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of anger in this country. Much of it is justified. Some of it is totally unnecessary and misdirected. The only thing that can lessen this anger is an informed public, a better understanding of economic principles, a rejection of foreign intervention, and a strict adherence to the constitutional rule of law. This will be difficult to achieve, but it's not impossible and well worth the effort.